Welcome to Thoughtspeak, the original Animorphs podcast dedicated to K.A. Applegate's sci-fi classic. I'm your host, Michelle.
And I'm Coleman.
And I will be the first to admit that it's been a little while since we've put one of these out.
We said we weren't going to mention that this time.
We always have to mention it. It's a cardinal rule of the podcast, as our fans are well aware at this point. We are always apologizing for coming back, but we always do come back, is the important part that I'd like to start by stressing.
It might take 10 years, it might take 15 years, but we're not going anywhere.
The real cool thing is that we are committed and we are working our way towards our last broadcast of the Thoughtspeak podcast, and we want to get this thing done this year. We really do. We are so grateful to our Patreon subscribers for keeping us going, keeping the lights on here at the Thoughtspeak Emporium that we live and work out of, our communal habitat.
It's a satellite office that's actually in space. It's an actual satellite.
Exactly. And, if you're feeling like you want to join us in making the last couple episodes here on the Thoughtspeak podcast count, please come join our Patreon, and we'll try our hardest to provide lots of good kickbacks for you, including some bonus private Thoughtspeak episodes. We want to thank our army. We want it to grow, but we appreciate what we got, and that is Nicholas Guy at our Yerk level and our friend Andrew at our Yerk level. We've got James Miola at our Taxon controller level. We've got Jacqueline Fisher, again, at that Taxon level. We've got Ben Freeman. Thank you so much for sticking with us for so long. Taxon, to the end. We love you. We need you. And I want to give a super special shout out to one of our newest Patreon subscribers, Penguin Tots, at our Hork-Bajir controller level. The highest honor and the highest amongst our army so far. We have Hork-Bajir. We've got some Taxons we can throw at you. We've even got a couple Yerk or two that we can create spies out of. Like, we got a decent army. Come join it.
Yeah, and I also want to give a shout out. We've gotten a few reviews since the last time we were on the air, which, as Michelle said, that was a while ago. So we should have thousands of reviews, but we only have a couple, but we appreciate them. One, I think you made the joke it came from a Sario rip, but it's from the Matrix, because the the name is just a series of numbers, but it sounds like a real review. It doesn't sound like a bot or anything. But they say they're late to the party. I can't believe I just discovered this now. Every episode they ask for reviews, and I only wish I could have given this sooner. This is one of my favorite podcasts I've ever found, and a great blast of nostalgia for my favorite childhood book series. So whoever you are who left that on July 5th, 2022, thank you so much. I'm glad that we're still reaching out to people and finding new listeners. We also had another one, which was about a year ago, which is about the last time we recorded, from Alice in Wonderland. Which is a clever little name there.
Love it.
But, they said that they went through a whole big routine. They signed up for iTunes, didn't have an Apple account or anything, and signed up just to give us a review. So, Alice, thank you so much. It's great. I mean, we look at the stats, and people are still finding the podcast, and hopefully that's putting out new episodes and wrapping this series up. It can just be this memorial to K. Applegate's amazing series that just, stands the test of time.
It's really cool that the podcast is apparently still growing and people are still just discovering us. One of these reviewers you mentioned said something about loving having discovered Coleman and Michael's podcast, and I just can't wait for the dramatic twist reveal that this new listener is about to get over the course of the series.
It really is like a mystery plot. She was a woman the whole time.
There you go. That's the best twist on it. So yeah, I mean, the show's still growing and we're still going. Haha, came up with that on the spot. And we'd love to, continue to grow the fan base while we finish this series out. That's our goal. We're sticking to it. And to that end, tonight we have our review of Book 51, The Absolute. And this is absolutely one that we've been thinking a lot about in the time that we've taken off. it's sat with us and digested a little bit, and I think we can pick it apart pretty well now. Let's
Well,
see if we want to start.
Well, I just want to say, yeah, absolutely. I get it. Absolutely. I actually had to reread it like today because I remembered the book. I remember what it was about, the plot, because we read it getting ready to record that episode like about a year ago. And I forgot if I enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it. You know, I remember the plot, but I couldn't remember how much I liked the book. So it was great. I finished it today again just to get ready for this episode. But before we get into our review, we surprisingly have some Animorphs news. I mean, there's some new things in the Animorphs industry to talk about. And
Heck yeah!
But the first bit of that, Chris Grine, friend of the show, secret co-host, he is putting out book 4, I think, here in just a little bit. Finish that up.
Graphic novel series.
Yeah, of the graphic novel series of Animorphs, starting on book 5 next week. I love following him on Twitter because he puts out sketches and fully illustrated pictures of what he's working on while he's making the books. It's incredible.
Yeah, it gives us a great look at what he's working on before it's even coming out, and we love his art. We love the style. It fits the series really well, and those graphic novels have been a treat and a blast. Hope they keep going.
Yeah, and well, apparently he's got an accelerated advance on up to book 6. And then, Kay Applegate's been promoting the graphic novel on Twitter quite a bit. So hopefully we get either the next 6. I just want to see. I mean, it's tough to say jump around because there are so many important books, but I'd love to see the David trilogy and then the ending of the series done by him, because I think it's hard to say he's going to do every book. Yes, with a couple
sprinkled in and out throughout the thing. Like, I would love to see an Elemist book. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, we would love that, as well as some Krayak, probably in a graphic novel form would be lovely. And those might be delivered to us by different artists as kind of asides or companion pieces, while Chris is bringing us the main series.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, like, not gonna throw Chris under the bus like that and say another artist should take it on. Give it all to Chris.
No, certainly not. But as much as I enjoy Chris's style, it would be unrealistic to expect the entire 50-some book series to be translated to graphic novels by him and him alone. I think giving equal opportunity to a bunch of different artists would really, really benefit the series overall.
Yeah, I just want to see Chris handle the main ones, and I'm okay if it jumps around. Even if it's just him, I'm okay if it picks up later in the story, just so we can see those big books and the big events and stuff. So that's great. And then you had some Michael Grant movie gossip from Twitter that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, lately here we had heard some rumblings about Hollywood executives, the dreaded real enemy of the entire story, picking up these rights for the Animorphs movie and basically putting on a facade of wanting to cooperate with the K.A. Applegates and include them in the process, and then ultimately come to sort of shut them out of the creative process and go their own route. So a lot of it, like you said, is very gossipy and hearsay from this second, third-hand source. So all I can tell you is that I did see some tweets put out by Michael Grant in which he confirmed that, talks had essentially broken down between he and Katherine and the executives, powers that be. And as far as I understand it, it's not as though Scholastic is to blame or any particular person or entity. It's just seeming like they truly don't understand what the franchise of Animorphs is and how to effectively tap into it in a way that's going to make the fan base pleased as well as bring in new people.
Yeah,
we're dealing with that they're floating are bad.
We're dealing with the same thing with the Last Airbender series, the new TV show, the live action one they're working on Netflix, where the creators of the show basically communication dropped off with them between the production and the creators. And it's like, that's only going to lead to bad marketing. And, if you're sitting there, everybody has a vision and why they jump onto a project. But if you're looking at the creators who made this thing that became popular and had such reach, and saying, no, I'm right, you guys take your little ideas and go elsewhere, I don't understand what benefit or why you think you're on the right path with that. I mean, these are the people who created these characters and these villains, and at least keep them involved and make sure that you're making something that aligns with their vision.
If they had any sense whatsoever and they truly wanted to, as they probably would put it, maximize profits off of this intellectual property, they would get the masterful authors of Katherine and Michael to write the script for this film. That if they knew what they were doing, that's who they would put in charge of the writing. But they don't. They're going to put one of their buddies or some really poor choice of writer-director combo that I think they can skate by with, or I just don't have high hopes for it at this point because it doesn't seem like it's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's been instances like famously Stanley Kubrick's The Shining did not listen to Stephen King and didn't want him to write the script, and we saw a Stephen King written script versus a Stanley Kubrick written one, and Stanley Kubrick, put him to shame. So, a good movie can be made. It's possible, but I don't see the point in, really sticking it to him like that. But we'll see, more Animorphs content. Maybe we'll come back and review it. Who knows? And, if it brings on more fans and steers people towards the books, although that's nearly impossible nowadays because you can't find the books anywhere except, used bookstores and eBay.
I do appreciate that it is getting a little bit trickier to track down the physical copies, which makes it all the more precious that I did put in that effort to doing that years ago. And I have a complete collection and it's not going anywhere. And I do intend to read it to my children when they're of proper age, third, fourth grade, around that age range. I'll introduce my kids to it because it's certainly important enough. It's just really cool that, Michael Grant takes the time to respond to fan tweets, and he's very social and active with the community. And just from what I've gathered, the things that he's indicated is that the outlook on an Animorphs movie is not too good for us right now, but not saying it can't change in the future. We'll hope and we'll look forward to that.
Oh, based on his tweets, I got the idea that it's moving forward just without them.
That could be. And if that's the case, we might end up with this worst case scenario where, it might be something similar to the Power Rangers recent reboot, where it's kind of forgettable, kind of like a, run-of-the-mill gritty reboot or reimagining of that property.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who really liked the Power Rangers reboot, but I didn't know what they were going for. I liked some of the character stuff, but it just didn't feel at all like Power Rangers or Super Sentai or anything. So it was weird.
Yeah, honestly, I felt like they played it a little too safe, if anything.
They're just like, we want them to look alien, and we don't want spandex and stuff like that. But
even the way the fight scenes were shot and stuff, it just wasn't choreographed like the show used to be. It really suffered from not having the involvement of the same people. Even with the Saban's blessing, you could tell they didn't have their hands on it.
Say what you will about the original run of Power Rangers, but they actually cared about portraying martial arts correctly on screen and the lifestyle, and it was cheesy and it was hokey, but a lot of those actors really cared about being martial artists and having that be a part of the show.
Oh, brother, I follow every one of the Power Rangers on all the socials, and
David
I guess
Yost.
At this point, we have to just throw in, or I have to throw in an R.I.P. Jason David Frank, okay?
Yep.
Because I really, really admired and respected him and his work, and it's just a tragic end there. So glad we went down the Power Rangers porthole today, huh?
Well, I am looking forward to the Netflix special, bringing back a lot of the classic actors. Jason didn't want to be a part of it, but David Yost, obviously Trini has passed away as well, but a lot of those original actors and the ones who were in the original Power Rangers movie are coming back for a one-off special. So
yeah,
it should be really cool.
The cast is typically pretty good about doing those reunions, so that's great. Yeah. Wow, a bonus Power Rangers tangent, and we haven't even started reviewing.
That's the next podcast. We're gonna review every episode of Power Rangers. We're gonna go through Turbo, when they become pirates.
Don't get me started. I would love it. We don't have time. We don't have time to dive into every single one of our real loves and hobbies.
We've got decades ahead of us.
So you think.
Yeah. Well, let's take this time to jump into the actual book that we're reviewing today, the Animorphs book. But before that, we're going to hear a message from our sponsor, which is also me. So take it away, Coleman. All right, good job. That's a great thing that you just had an ad for, and we're talking about, Coleman. You're so good at those. Continue to do those forever. Why don't we talk about this book that we came here to talk about?
Okay. In this episode, we're talking Animorphs 51, The Absolute. And we normally start off discussing the covers because this being the Animorphs book series, the covers are always very prominently featured, and boy, this one does not disappoint. It's monstrously ugly, seeing the very, at this point, bizarre character model for Marco, who looks nothing like the start of the Marco models, turning into a duck, and the ugly yellow mustard background with the dark difference clouds is just, it's not a pretty cover necessarily. I don't think so.
It's about as exciting as a duck. The color scheme.
How does it make you feel?
It's very duck based.
Same way a duck makes me feel, right? Well, at least we've got this lovely splash text on here that says the countdown has begun. It is countdown time. Only 3 more books until the end, folks. That's not technically true. Technically speaking, there's 4. But we're going to ignore that for now and just bathe in the absolute and all that it entails.
Do you want to read the back as well? I don't have the physical copy in front of me.
Yeah, right? And I mean, Seropedia is so hard to pull up, but here we are.
I don't have a hotkey for that on my Stream Deck, so...
All right. The summary for the Absolute is as follows. The Yeerks aren't playing around anymore. They are no longer hiding behind a silent invasion, and one of the first steps they've initiated is to take over the National Guard to prepare for an all-out war against humanity, an all-out war against Earth. Marco, the other Animorphs, and Axe couldn't be less prepared for this news, because they know the Yeerks are onto them, and now they're in hiding. Things are falling apart, and for once, Jake may not be able to make the decision that will save them. And, you know, it's an apt description. It really doesn't reveal too much about the meat and potatoes of this book, and the gravy, and the parsley.
Peas?
Exactly. Like a lot of descriptions, this one, you know, kind of leaves out the central plot, but that's what we're here for.
Nice call out for Jake, though. He's barely in this book, but yeah, we're really worried about what Jake thinks about it.
Exactly. We gotta keep reminding the audience.
That's one thing, before we get super into spoilers, that's one thing I was surprised by. Like, not a lot of fallout from Cassie giving up the box in the beginning of this book. Like, it's mentioned.
And you know what? That's a very, very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. We would be, what's the word I'm looking for? We would be at a loss to not mention the events of the previous book because it's been so long for us. But yes, that's exactly what happened. Cassie gave up the box, and the Yeerks have the morphing ability, which we'll see throughout this story. But you bring up a very good point. this story is highly focused on Marco and his team that he's leading here.
It's the
And
last Marco book in the series.
That's exactly the point that I wanted to make, is that this is the last Marco book, and this is the ultimate reflection of his growth as a character from book one, the kid who didn't want to fight, who wanted to find every excuse to quit and stop, to the actual Marco who can independently lead a team of his own on missions that are life and death, and do it without, any second thoughts or anything like that, as we're about to dive into here. So, did you have any other thoughts on the summary or the overall ugliness of the cover of this book? The interior cover is just a bunch of ducks flying. I guess it's the team going on their mission, but it's really just a bunch of ducks flying in a sunset.
No, but I will bring up one of my notes here because we'll probably forget when we actually get to the gardens. I love that, at this point in the series, they're just trying to figure out what animal we put on the cover, what animal is going to feature prominently that we haven't done already. And for this one, they finally caved in and are like, okay, let's hit our duck crowd, really give them what they want. And I love that Marco in the gardens is like, why haven't we done ducks before? Like, these are great flyers. We've done long distances. Like, they have a little meta moment mentioning the fact that, like, oh, ducks would have been, like, super helpful and, like, 17% of these other missions.
Remember that one mission where we had to fly out to an aircraft carrier out on the sea, and we chose seagull?
Yep.
Like, duck might have been good.
Or that time they went on an airplane to get somewhere far away.
Oh yeah. So there's tons of reasons why duck graces the cover on this book about war and the start of a very open public war. We get the least intimidating animal on the cover.
Spoilers. Yeah, I mean, this book is really interesting. I'm not going to review it yet, but right here from the get-go, we go straight into an action scene, which we see that in other Animorphs books. But this is the one that, even there's a couple moments of strategy and planning and going back to the rest of the group, this is kind of action scene after action scene after action scene. Like, it's a very progressively fast-paced book.
Yes, you're right about that, absolutely. There is really only one kind of low-speed group meeting discussion with Jake's depression being the central focus of the scene.
Oh, Jake.
And then it's peace out to everybody else and Marco's mission. And like you said, yeah, it's a nonstop roller coaster.
Which it makes sense. Yeerks have morphing ability now. Like, they're gonna get attacked everywhere they go.
At any public appearance.
I don't think the books ever get into it, but I'd love to know how the Yeerks are dishing out the morphing ability. Like, are they going to, like, sub-commanders only? Are they, like, making these elite teams of just morphers? I mean, that would make sense if they're, like, special forces.
There's some priority hierarchy for sure.
Yeah. Or Visor 1 just has the box out in the lobby of the Yeerk pool, and you can touch it as you go by.
Why wouldn't they immediately give that power to the Taxons, though, and morph the Taxons into something useful and not disgusting?
Well, yeah.
I mean, not that Taxons aren't useful.
Spoilers for literally, 53, the answer. That's what they come up with.
Exactly. But, I mean, we'll get to it eventually, right? I'm just thinking long term here.
I think, okay, another tangent, but what would be really smart is for a Yeerk to, and I think one of them does this, or it's brought up in some way, but a Yeerk to not only have their controller get the morphing ability, but also have the Yeerk itself get the morphing ability. So if their controller dies or something goes wrong, they can morph into, like, a human or another alien and, like, run away from their host.
Right.
And, like, still survive. Oh, but another thing I didn't think about till just now.
Major brain thought, what?
Yeah. How are they controlling these morph-capable hosts? Because they're down in the Yeerk pool, swimming around for 3 days, and the hosts are in a cage. Why aren't they just morphing cockroach and getting out, or morphing, leopards and tearing shit up.
You're right about that, and I assume it's because they specifically pick only birds or like the wildcats or whatever the ground-based animals they choose for them are, and they're not giving them those small infiltrating sort of animal morphs like the Animorphs are using for their reconnaissance missions.
They could also only be using volunteer hosts for morph capability.
Well, I don't know if they're involving the volunteer hosts on that level. It's a lot of weird things to speculate.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
About
You gotta be able to trust your host while you're not in the body to not morph into a tiger and attack the guards.
I would also, I think they're not giving them those really high power morphs. I think they're being very jerky about it and only giving them like
no, we see hardcore.
What was the thing here? A cougar or a
leopard,
wildcat?
But we see battle morphs in the next few books. We see Yerks with battle morphs. So
yeah, that's right. They do acquire some other ground based like wolves and other mean animals.
Last thought on this: they also could not be telling the hosts how to morph. Like you have to learn that. You can't just do it automatically. So if the hosts themselves don't know how to morph, then they wouldn't know the process.
Could easily be withholding that information or outright lying. This is alien magic that only we can do. Shut up and don't ask questions. You're a hawk now.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the book. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Like you mentioned, it starts out with that action scene where Marco and Tobias are scoping out this really sketchy National Guard like transit line unit that's bringing all these tanks into their city. This leads to the really fun opening scene of them stealing a tank and getting inside of it and riding, going on a little joyride destruction spree that ends in them destroying Chapman's house, which is a good callback. They mentioned that like Melissa's not there. She's out of town for something.
I don't know how they don't know the cat's not there, though. They mentioned that. Oh, the cat wasn't even there. How do you know if it's sleeping in, like, the basement or something?
Tobias saw it somewhere else. Tobias ate that cat long ago, to be honest with you. Tobias was like, times are tough. Sorry, Fluffer McKitty.
But I like how comfortable they are with the series now that they can make the joke of, like, well, where did the tank end up? Remember the house that Chapman had, that nice 2-story place? Yeah, we left it there.
And now it's a 1-story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And just a dick move by Marco. Just, hey, we got this tank. Let's take out the Chapmans.
He does understand though that the Chapman family is high-ranking controllers, and any inconvenience on them benefits his team slightly. So good on him. But while they're out there doing this, they make this discovery that, obviously something big is happening and it's starting to involve the government.
Specifically the California National Guard.
There you go. Do they say California in this one?
Well, we know they're on the West Coast and they're in California, so.
Sure, they don't say California though.
Yeah, but we know it's California because we've read the whole series. We know they're in California.
Okay, all right, spoilers, whatever. I wrote that the Animorph War Council must decide if the sudden National Guard movement is about if it's a Yerk plot or not. And you're right. The Jake just straight out exits the book right here because he's like, look, we need to start running interference with us and the auxiliary Animorphs previously on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to carry out their little interference missions on the side. The task of like doing the big thing and going to meet with the governor, Jake just like offhandedly gives that to Marco. Yeah, he's struggling with a lot of stuff and he's more or less kind of checked out. But it still speaks to both their characters that something of this magnitude and this level, now he instantly has no issues giving Marco that command to be like, you're in charge.
Marco's very much like second in command. He's the one he trusts with missions and strategy. I mean, that's the big thing Marco is great at. And he also very pointedly, disses Cassie here. Cassie's sitting on like a picnic table in the back of the group, and no one's really paying much attention to her. But the fact that Jake is like kind of petty about it, and he's like, well, I'm giving it to Marco because I trust him. Looking at you, Cassie.
Yeah, he rubs it in a bit, and that's very, very warranted, I think. I mean, nobody understands what Cassie is thinking or going through, quite like Jake does, but
You know what? I'll say this here. Thoughtspeak didn't trust Cassie from the very first episode of the podcast. So we were there first, Jake.
I'm pretty sure we both made points at one point for why Cassie was our favorite character.
No, it was a long-running joke until book 18 or 19, the one where she turns into a butterfly. We were very anti-Cassie on the show. We got hate mail because of it.
I don't remember that at all, but it's more than likely because of the way Cassie was written initially as the green voice of reason, quote, morality, speaker of animals kind of thing. The way that they twisted that character archetype with her is what's brilliant about her and why she's such a good, effective character.
Yeah, once Cassie started doing brain surgery, I was on board with her character.
Yeah, totally. Alien brain surgery, mind you. Mm-hmm. The hard kind.
There were glands. There were lots of glands.
That's expert mode. That's big brain stuff. So yeah, this is the primary setup is as simple as we just put it. It's like government on the move, bad stuff, investigate. Marco's in charge of leading this team, and this is one of our favorite teams, by the way. Marco, Tobias, and Axe. Always a great time when these three get together. But they're gonna need some new morphs to do some long distance flying, as we talked about, which leads to another battle scene at the gardens, where they, fight against some mighty Morphin Yurt controllers. And it's bird on birds. I wrote that Tobias outbirds an eagle at one point.
Yeah, I thought there was more to them being discovered at the gardens, and then I realized earlier today when I was reading it again, no, they just forgot what time the gardens opened, and were just sitting in a pond when like the school kids start coming in on field trips and stuff. Like there's nothing more to that, and there was some Yerks around. That's all it is.
Basically, it's a very quick setup for an action scene. The point is, we've seen things like this before. They have a close call, a scrapey-do, and they manage to get out of there in time. Morphing
now we're ducks. Yeah.
Add that one to the repertoire.
I do like that they decide to fly with another migrating duck troop. Just to blend in. And then that's when they're having the discussion about, like, why haven't we used ducks before? When they're like, we could travel together in a V formation instead of being miles apart as, hawks and stuff. So just a fun little duck conversation.
Yeah, totally. The book takes kind of a weird turn from there in that they have a bit of a hard time locating, like, the governor, where she is, who she is. They don't even realize that it's a woman until like halfway through the mission when they're about to meet her. And I can't help but feel like it's kind of dumb that they didn't know that information. They didn't look it up.
It is. It totally is. But I will say this is on Jake, because whenever they do a really important mission, like one where a lot's on the line, Jake is usually the person who's like, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to figure out who it is, where they're going to be, where we need to meet up with them. Like, he's the one who usually lays out that plan.
He's
like
the
that pre-pro.
Sure.
Yeah, that intelligence.
Yeah, the pre-pro.
Yeah. So, it's on the fact that Jake's kind of checked out and he's focused on his mission and just wants to be part of the group, whatever. And Marco didn't think to, do any of this research. And I love how Axe is getting, like, mad. He's like, what are we amateurs? Like, he's getting mad that they don't even know what the governor looks like.
Give me something to hack, damn it. A computer system, a mainframe, whatever. I'll tell you what you need to know. And Marco's like, yeah, oops, did an oopsie goofer, and I didn't research who we're going to look for, but we're on our way. And they managed to luck upon the governor's limousine and
no. They get to the Capitol, and they know the governor's not going to be there. But then they have to stop at a gas station and ask a biker named Chopper on where the governor's mansion is. They ask all these people in a gas station, and nobody knows except this biker, and he tells them to go, north on 75.
I wrote that detail in my summary and I skipped over it because I thought this is just such a weird inclusion in this story.
Look, we're Thoughtspeak. We include the weird stuff. That's the point.
I mean, they went with it, and it's not what I expected, and it's certainly a welcome addition, I guess.
I thought Chopper was gonna come back later in the episode, or later in the book, the Humvees are pulling up and the government agents, and then just a bunch of biker bros pull up to the mansion and with chains.
He's the one that takes down the helicopter in the end.
So they get to the governor's mansion, and that's where they see the limousine and all that, and hop on board. There's kind of I don't know, I liked a lot of this book, but all the parts where there were cockroaches underneath the limousine, I thought were written very confusingly. I was having a hard time understanding what was going on, and had to reread sentences and stuff. It was just weirdly laying out the 3D scene in the writing. I thought it was kind of strange.
It did seem like kind of a long stretch of filler material that moved our characters from one location to the next and from one set piece to the next. And you're right. It just, you skip over it and it's whatever. Finally, here's the stuff. They made it. They found the governor. They're able to warn her of the danger, but not before her husband and another one of her servicemen is revealed to be a controller. And as always, these situations go, it's one step forward, two steps back, and now the Animorphs are in danger again. They're in a pinch and they got to escape.
Yeah, and I like the whole, they don't really know who the governor is, so they're just kind of guessing, but they don't know it's a woman, so they assume it's the guy who they follow in the limousine. And then they find out that it's actually his wife is the governor, and he's the first gentleman, I guess, of the California
political hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. And she finds out that he's a controller and all that. And then when things erupt, to be fair, it goes really crazy and just keeps escalating. This is what I'm talking about, the plotting of this. I honestly, it's one of the few action scenes in Animorphs where I was how are they gonna get out of this? Because they can't just morph cockroach and get away, because they have a human who can't morph that they're trying to protect. So
no, you're right. This is one of the Animorphs' kind of first real, what are those called in games? Protect quests or escort missions?
Escort missions,
an escort mission. They don't often do that in these books. You're right. And this one is super high stakes, being the governor and the highest authority in the American government that they need to appeal to really get on their side to turn this war in the Animorphs' favor, the humans' favor.
It's a big deal in the series too. I mean, it's exciting having them talk to her and start laying things out, because it's not just, an auxiliary Animorph they're trying to convince to join them, or some random person who saw a taxon and they're trying to keep them safe. This is outreach to the broader global war that's about to happen. This is the first steps towards no more secrets, no more anything,
It's all out there. It's all hanging out in the public now. Well, presumably, it's about to be anyway. After this fight scene that goes down, like you said, it's a really tense escape scene, and it leaves a pretty large scale wake of destruction in their path here. They take out, like I said, a helicopter,
a bridge,
there's
basically
a passing yacht, and a bridge. That's right, gets destroyed.
And I want to talk about the helicopter.
Swim.
I want to talk about the helicopter moment, because it's pretty cold of Marco. I mean, we've seen him do some other stuff, but he just charges up a Dracon beam and blasts a helicopter out of the sky with a pilot and a gunner, and that's just, we don't see them flat out just murder people very often. And
that is something that is pointed out on the Seropedia, is that this is the first time that an Animorph has explicitly and deliberately murdered another human being. Marco,
it's a
here.
big deal. And I get it, in police chases, the helicopter is the number one reason that criminals don't get away, because they can stay on them forever. They can just stay over them and constantly follow them. So getting rid of the helicopter is the only reason they got away. So Marco was smart to do that. But yeah, we've just never seen that kind of deliberate violence offensive violence from the Animorphs.
Yeah, totally. And similarly, Axe earlier in the book throws one of your controllers in that leopard morph into a tiger enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
And, just kind of leaves him to be. I mean, maybe he demorphed and got away, or remorphed something like a bird and got away, but maybe the tiger straight up got him. Another thing that happened was that Tobias really critically injures another controller while they're in morph, and it's kind of indicated that they like snap their neck or something very life-threatening.
We're used to he absolutely snaps the neck of that. It's like an osprey or one of the peregrine falcons, but we're used to seeing the Animorphs hurt and it being pretty graphic with how they're hurt. This is one of the first books where like the action is them doing damage,
causing the violence,
not just scraping somebody's eyes, but like taking people out. So it's getting real. It's getting very real.
It's warfare. Well, now it's not just like their guerrilla tactics and kind of defense and interference, whatever. It's outright attacking. Yeah, very much in line with, I think, what Rachel had planned earlier when she took control.
I would say that throughout the entire series, Marco is a much more brutal person than Rachel ever is.
Well, yes, and you know what? Marco's is very much more calculated and deliberate, as well as in control, unlike Rachel's. But it was a fun roller coaster ride of action here for this climax. And the thing is, it's not even over yet because they get away and they're able to kind of regroup at the governor's residence or the secret location. And the governor has some insight about a secret regiment of the National Guardsmen that were away doing the secret training in the desert for like weeks, and it's assumed that they're not infested, so they're gonna call them in for support. And it really seems like, oh, good guys are coming, but lo and behold, an entire army of bad guys comes first.
Well, she also has a security force, like a section of the police that she knows has also been not out in the desert, but in like close training where they wouldn't be able to go to a Yerk pool or anything. So she calls the combat unit, the battalion, to come protect the governor's mansion. But then she also calls the security force for like detail security just for her. So she's got, she'll have protection, but the security force isn't going to get there for a while. And like you said, these Yerks are showing up quickly. But we do see the head of the security force rushing over in a police car, and he's going to beat the Yerks to the mansion. So
yeah, what a total
tense
Chad.
scene. Yeah. And then I love this little part where we don't see the Animorphs give themselves up very often, but Marco morphs the governor and puts on her clothes she was wearing earlier, and hands himself over to the Yerks, pretending to be her.
This is so ballsy of Marco. I mean, really, this could have gone any way. This could have gone any bad way for him and the team. And it really shows Marco's character progression, just his maturity, his leadership, where he's like, the only way that I can see this mission turning out successful here with the governor and her men escaping safely is if I take her place and run diversion here and trust my boys to get me out when the time comes. And they do. And it pays off in a big way. It's a huge gamble, but it shows that the level that Marco's on now is very much professional war man.
I will say he could have done one other thing that probably would have been much smarter than this whole tactic, and that's not take the governor back to her mansion where they expect her to be. Like, literally take her anywhere else where the Yerks wouldn't be able to find her so quickly after they got away.
Well, I think the goal here was that the Animorphs were never intending on providing a source of protection or security to her. It was more about getting the warning and the word out so that she could do her part in spreading awareness of the Yerks not about keeping her personally safe and involved. And to that end, they saw their mission through and they got out.
Yeah, I guess if they took her back to the Hork-Bajir Valley, the Yeerks could just install a new governor or like a vice governor or something, you know.
Yep, it was a catch and release. We gotta get this one, and we gotta make sure we make her an ally and get her making more human allies and get the word out on the Yerks. And to that end, that's exactly what happens because the team returns back to the valley, and apparently they've got TV out there or something, and they're able to see on the news the governor giving the announcement that it's the state of emergency and alien invasion is full on, and then the world knows. So the secret's out there.
Yeah, they
Folks.
leave it just a full-on cliffhanger of the Animorphs turning off the TV and being like, "Whoa," you know, like it's done, you know. The world knows, and it's the books after this kind of go into like how many people actually believe the governor at first, but I have not read the next book. The next book is the last Animorphs book I have not read.
Oh, way to go!
Yeah, and
The
but I know
last
what
Axe
happens.
book.
Yeah, but I know generally what happens, and it doesn't matter news reports after the next book. Like, people know because they're seeing all-out warfare and you know, major things happening. So that's
It's
going
going
to
to
be
be a
exciting.
really, really cool progression here in these next two books for sure. And not only do we have those to look forward to, but as soon as we get that rapid fire escalation of the plot, we get the Elemist Chronicles to
Ugh,
fill in some good backstory before sending us off to that
which
finale.
is easily my favorite book in the entire series. I mean, that's just it's a spoiler to say for our review there, but for me, I mean, how many books did you pick up at the Scholastic Book Fair that questioned the nature of God and our universe and how we live in it and our purpose? You know, like that's going to
Only
be in
that
the
one
same book to get to.
Goosebumps.
Oh yeah, it's Werewolf at Fever Swamp did the same thing.
The Curse of the Cuckoo Clock of Doom. Whatever. Yeah. All the way. So that's actually that's where this book ends. That's the end of the Absolute, Animorphs 51. And I don't know that we should waste any more time in delivering our reviews, my dear friend. Do you want to talk first about your review, or shall
Sure.
I?
One of the quicker summaries we've ever done, because the plot is so action packed and moving forward. You know, there's details we could talk about more and stuff, but or maybe listeners, you're just getting a more streamlined version of Thoughtspeak than we've ever done before, and we're just on point. One of those two things is true, but I would say that I had to reread this book today, as I said, because I did not remember if I enjoyed it or not. And I think that does say something about, you know, does this book have a lot of things to say about like the characters or their place in the war or the war effort in general or metaphorical diversions into the psyche of our characters? No, that's not really what this book is trying to do. But is it one of the best action set pieces we've gotten from the series and like really pumping us up for all out warfare? And yeah, I think it is. I think it's like well written action, which is very hard to pull off. Like people don't understand it's not easy, but it's much easier to put a blockbuster movie on screen that has exciting set pieces and action scenes and stuff like that and really pull you in. Books are really hard to write prose that, you know, is engaging action, and I think this book does it really well. So I had a blast. It was a speedy read, and then you do get the big plot kicker of, you know, a politician in a major seat of government addressing the Yerks on national TV. That's huge for the series, and I think we do get a couple moments in this book that are first times for the series and setting us up for the ending. And it's an important book and it's great and it's just fun. It's just a fun Animorphs book. So I haven't thought about my review score at all, but
Oh boy.
honestly, it might be a little high. If we gave 0.5s, I might give this a 3.5, but I actually think I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 V formation mallards. That's my review.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's you said it a lot, I think, better than I could, and I'm gonna meet you right there with the 4. It's an absolute 4 out of 5 duck poops, and for those reasons that you say, but also because of I just really dig the overall characterization of Marco, and I think this book does a real justice to delivering that kind of finality to his growth as a leader and just a mature, competent person that you can trust with your life in a live or die, make or break moment. And I think a really fun reading experiment might be to go back and read like book 5, the first Marco book, and then right after it, read this one. I guarantee it'll be a good time because these are both really good books. And yeah, I think if you're looking for one of the Animorphs books to reread that does stuff for the overall plot and is just a fun, fast, action-packed read, this is an excellent choice to revisit. And that's gonna conclude my review. So it's 4 out of 5 duck poops for me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like filler. It's not like some random side story. It's important to the progression towards the ending. But yeah, it's very like I don't know how to say anything but fluff. It's not fluff, but it's just a fun roller coaster downhill ride, to heading towards the ending.
Exactly. What you pointed out that like when you get done reading it, you almost have a feeling like, well, that was really fun, but I feel like nothing really happened necessarily. But the status quo overall is what changed. That's what happened in the book. And it's not necessarily something that you can see. They summarize it pretty well at the end by them watching the news report and that being revealed to the world. That's the overall point. But yeah, it's hard to feel like that sense of something definitely happened there. And it probably won't until we get to the next book and we see the aftermath.
Well, I think if I had to nail it down, I think that this book, it needed its pace and what it did to fill the role of being an action-packed book. But I think normally this whole book would have just been the ending mission of a normal book. Because the normal book would have started out setting up the A plot, which is usually a character struggling with something like their parents divorcing or their place in becoming an aunt. And
them in school.
Yeah, it would have had an A plot of them dealing with something as a character that's specific to them, and then they would have had that first mission, and then we would have revisited the A plot, and then it would have been the B plot, the action mission section. Yeah.
That's how they used to structure these things. But in the end game, of course, we're going to get some huge departures from those formulas that we used to see. So this is kind of a refreshing one. I mean, the opening scene clearly sets up, stuff's happening, big stuff's happening. Quick expositional, Jake's head is in the dumpster, Marco's got to lead the mission, and then it's for the most part nonstop action. So a really solid time, and I'm looking forward to the next book too. Axe books in general are always entertaining. I know it's gonna contain some really, really heavy moments for the series and for a lot of people's characterizations, not just Axe, but there's gonna be some other characters feeling the heat in this next one.
I think in-game Axe, and we saw this in the last Axe book, in-game Axe is all about, okay, we've been playing war, but I know what real war looks like, and I'm okay making the hard decisions to win. Axe is looking for a checkmate, and at the end of the day, Axe will choose that over following the Animorphs or following Jake's orders, and that's his character here at the end.
It's a really interesting dynamic they take with him, and damned if it doesn't pay off and work out. But we'll dive into that on the next episode of Thoughtspeak. I promise to you, dear listener, so long as you're willing to hang in there with us a little bit longer. I feel like 2023 is gonna be the year of Thoughtspeak, and if we haven't said that every year. I don't. This will be the year where it's true. Gosh darn.
I mean, honestly, I'm amazed we didn't finish the series in 2022. We had the gumption and the momentum, but maybe 23.
I had it scheduled.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, you can always find us. You can email us at thoughtspeakcast@gmail.com. Please go on iTunes and leave a review. It really helps out the show. And at some point, we lost all our reviews. So we really appreciate just jumping on there and giving us a star rating or leaving a fun review. And we'll read it on the air if we find it in time or remember to. We also have a very lively Patreon that we really appreciate. And that helps us give, it gives us the oomph to finish this series and wrap it up and get great hosts and co-hosts and guest hosts, like when we got Michael Grant on the show, co-author of the series, and maybe we have a couple of those big guests coming up. We'll see. So anything you can give on Patreon or help out the show, that really is appreciated by us. But again, if you don't want to give money, just an iTunes review would be super helpful, or wherever you listen to this podcast. I don't even listen on iTunes. So we appreciate everyone sticking with us we were joking about this, and Michelle might not like me saying it on air, but 8 years ago we started this podcast, and we have been awful consistently putting out episodes, but you guys have stuck with us, and there's still people listening and emailing us and really enjoying the show. And we have changed so much from the beginning of the show that it's really cool that you guys have stuck with us, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it to the end, and we're here for you. So let us know what you think about this latest comeback from us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
I would like to see a fan-led initiative to get Michael Grant to come back to the last transmission here of the Thoughtspeak podcast, and bring his wife Katherine, because boy, we'd love to talk to her and pick her brain about lots of stuff. I want to make that happen. I really do. The highlight of my life, definitely like top 5 moments, was interviewing Michael Grant. And if you haven't heard that episode of Thoughtspeak, go back and do it. I really want to remake it, given all the changes that have come recently in the past couple of years. And yeah, thanks for continuing to support us. Coleman, I know we hadn't discussed this, but I really want to end this comeback here in a positive way. I think we owe it to our fans. Can I read the section or segment that I had an AI program write that's Animorphs related, that you and I both had a good chuckle about last night?
Yeah, so let me set this up. And I have the new theme music playing in the background, so it's gonna make it even more epic.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we were joking about ChatGPT, which is a new AI that's been making waves across the internet, in that it predicts text in a way that chatbots really haven't done in the past, and it's fancy and new. And so we gave it a prompt. We said, what was the exact prompt? Do you remember?
Yeah, I told it to write a scene in which Jake and Marco are kissing in Cassie's barn privately until they're interrupted by Tobias, who is embarrassed at first, but then decides to join.
Yes, it's very fan fiction-y, as we've seen many Animorphs fan fictions. But go ahead and read it, Michelle. That's all you.
It's everything I ever dreamed of, okay? And it starts thusly. Jake and Marco had been together for a while, but they hadn't been able to find a quiet place to share their affection. That changed when Cassie offered them the use of her barn. They had been meeting there for weeks, taking their time and exploring each other. Today was no different. They were alone in the barn, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. As they embraced, they heard a soft flapping sound above them. Startled, they both looked up to see Tobias staring down at them, his expression one of shock. Jake and Marco quickly scrambled apart, embarrassed. Tobias was about to turn away. Then he paused. "You two look like you're having a lot of fun," he said, smirking. Jake and Marco exchanged a look, then shrugged. "Do you want to join us?" Jake asked. Tobias hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He flew down and landed beside them, and the three of them shared an awkward embrace. The kids began slowly, but soon they were all lost in the moment. It was an odd sensation, but one that felt right. They were all connected, and it seemed like nothing could come between them. End scene. Wow! I am so happy to have brought you this steamy Animorphs fanfiction moment. Thank you all so much for listening to the Thoughtspeak podcast. We'll be back next time with our next review. I've been your host, Michelle.
And I've been Coleman.
See y'all later.
That's our show.